This video is dedicated to my mother because it's her birthday. Just kidding, it's not. How to Win with Gloomspite Gitz, September 2024. Special thanks to all the people that have donated art to the channel: Elite Knitster, Jar Miniatures, Kuri, Majuj, Mass Camera Photo, and Scarecrow. If you wanna send me some photos, guys, I'd love to post them. I'd love to share them. Just gotta, I prefer neutral backgrounds. But a bigger thanks, of course, to all my patrons. The best way to support the channel is on Patreon, links below. Also, Baron of Dice for supporting the channel. If you're going to buy dice, you might as well buy them from Baron of Dice. They have a lot of sick dice, you should check it out. And if you're going to buy from Baron of Dice, use code MDG at checkout. And also thanks to Iberian for art and logos and everything for the channel. Big fan. Okay, so general army overview of Gloomspite Gitz. They're a very, very popular army. People love the models, they're great. The Mangler Squig, I remember watching a Hey Whoa video where he was rating all the AOS centerpieces, and the Mangler Squig was rated at the top, and it's hard to deny it's an absolutely beautiful model. They're also an army with a lot of range and flexibility. You want to play trolls, you want to play spiders, you want to play squigs, you want to play Moon Clan, you want to play some combination thereof. There's a lot of flexibility in how this army gets played. I think that's another reason why it's popular. They're also just great. I mean, destruction armies, everyone knows that destruction armies are having the most fun. We have some interesting casters, like we can have multiple +1 casts, and I think we can get up to 5 casts pretty easily. If you also wanted to go a really casting heavy army, you could do like a Spider Fang army. They have some like AoE +1 to cast, if I'm remembering correctly. The army also has some pretty great anvils in rockets and trolls in general, cavalry with mounted grots on squigs, monsters like the Dankhold, big monsters, Trug, right, and Kragnos, of course. We also have some pretty powerful spells. This includes the manifestation lore, right? I've been looking at the Stormcast Eternals lately, and it seems like a lot of Stormcast players don't want to take their manifestation lore, but we do. We want to take our manifestation lore, and that says a lot because of how powerful some of the other manifestation lores are, and we're taking our own, right? Which is cool. And faction terrain, the recursion that comes out of the Loon Shrine is phenomenal, right? And just being able to place faction terrain on the table has its own benefits for sure. So let's look at some battle traits. I also have on my other monitor here, I have the actual, let's see, I have it up here too, so we can take a look directly at what these things are. Oops. So just to keep it quick, because these things are not very complicated, the Bad Moon's orbit. At the start of the game, you pick a quadrant, and then the moon starts in that quadrant, and then that quadrant has the light of the Bad Moon. And then on a 4-up, at the, I think it's, let's see, start of the battle round. Right, so at the start of the battle round, you roll a die, and if it's a 4-up, the moon moves into the middle of the table where it covers the whole table. And if it stays on a 1, 2, or 3, it stays in that quadrant. And then it goes from one quadrant to the middle of the table where it has the whole table, and then it goes to the opposite quadrant of where it started, and then it moves off the table. And Scragrot the Loon King has an ability where you can essentially just say what the roll is instead of having to roll it. This can be really powerful for making sure that that moon stays in the middle of the table for one additional turn, or if you've had a couple of bad rolls, to make sure that it actually gets to the middle of the table. And then almost all, there's one exception as far as I know, all Gloomspite Gitz units, depending on what kind of unit they are going to get some form of buff. So if they are if they're a non-Squig Moon Clan unit, so this is like your Stabas and your Shootas and your Fanatics, right? They're going to get +3 to their control score. Squigs can re-roll their random movement. Trogs have +1 to save, and Spider Fangs crit on 5s. So, I mean, the Squig one is okay, being able to re-roll that random movement. It helps maintain some consistency in the army. Also, don't forget that you have to decide if your unit is running before you start rolling these dice. You can't roll a bad move roll and then decide post hoc that you're going to run. You have to say, this Squig unit is running, and then roll the random movement, re-roll the random movement, roll the run movement. You can't do it after the fact. And so this ability is okay. All that it really does is add some consistency to the Squigs. The Trog +1 save is fantastic. Going to a 3-up save on Trogoffs is very, very strong. For like the Fanatics and everything else, like +3 control score, pretty meh. Not, like, I forget about this all the time because it never really comes up. And Spider Fang critting on 5s, I don't... The spiders have such a low volume of dice, this isn't super impactful. Remember, the more dice that you throw, the more that crits matters. But if you're only throwing like 8 dice or whatever it is, it's like, okay, well, I doubled the output, but it's not like a huge amount, right? It's fine. And just in case you were wondering, the only unit that doesn't have one of these keywords, and let's talk about it later. We'll talk about it later. I think there's a section for this. So for battle formations, we have 4. We have Squigalanche, which gives +1 attacks to essentially the companion weapons for Squigs, right? It's the actual Squig attacks, not the riders. We have Trog Herd, which is when after Trogs fight, they get to heal D3. This is not to be confused with the healing that they do at the start of the turn. The Rock Guts and the Fellwaters heal D3, but some of the bigger monsters, they heal like D6 or whatever, right? So they don't get to heal whatever die they have, they all just heal a D3. Moonclan Scrap, so this is at the end of every turn. Nope, sorry, this is worse than I thought it was. It's only at the end of your turn. You can pick three of them, non-Squig Moonclans. They make a pile in, and then they do 2-up D3 mortals. But they have to be in combat. So this is the idea is, I guess, you're swarming your opponent with lots and lots of stabbas, but it's yeah, whatever. And then there's also one for Spider Fang. It's this Realm Web Ambush. Essentially, when you take your Skidastrand into null deployment, you can bring another unit with it, and then when you put it on the table, you can bring that other unit of spiders with your unit. It's another friendly Spider Fang. Right, so this could be like anything that has the Spider Fang keyword. So I don't even know what you'd take really besides Spider Riders, right? I don't know. You could take a monster, I guess, with you. They have to be set up wholly within 12, so I don't know. But realistically, like, the Trog Herd one is fantastic if you're taking trolls. Fantastic. The Squigalanche with +1 companion attacks is really good if your list is full of Squigs. But to be honest, I mean, if you're playing like a Moon Clan sort of army or style, even if you have any trolls or any Squigs, it might be better to take Squigalanche and Trog Herd, realistically. Same thing with spiders. It's like, I just don't see how this is going to be very strong. Right now, I mean, if you look at the meta, it's like trolls are just dominating, so everyone's taking Trog Herd. I think you can still make a good Squig list and take Squigalanche, but I think those are the only 2 real ways to play this army. I mean, I said in the previous slide that there's a lot of different ways that you can play this army, but that's only kind of partially true because the truth of it is that, you know, trolls are obviously the best, Squigs are runner-up, and then the other 2 are barely worth even considering at all, right? I don't think I've seen a Squig list in the top 5 or even top 10 of any GTs with 25 or more players or 30 or more players since 4th edition's come out. It's just trolls, trolls, trolls. To give you a sense of this too, like, I'm playing a game with a friend of mine tonight, and he's playing like a pretty meta Night Hunt list, and I knew that's what he was going to bring, you know, and I was thinking about like, well, what should I play? And I'm just going to play a whole bunch of Rock Guts. I'm going to play a whole bunch of Rock Guts and Kragnos, and we're going to see if they can stand up to Night Hunt. We'll see. Heroic traits. So we have Fight Another Day. Let's see. Heroic traits. So if we have Fight Another Day, which is... It's essentially the same as Slippery Scumbag from Cruel Boys. In any combat phase, if this unit is in combat, on a 3-up, it retreats without taking damage. So this happens before you actually fight. I thought this was much better in 3rd edition. Fight Another Day in 3rd edition was you fight and then retreat. And so I would put it on like a Mangler, like a Loon Boss with Mangler Squig, and it would like take a bite out of something and then bounce away. It was super annoying. This Fight Another Day happens before combat. But one thing that's, yeah, okay, let's just keep talking. The Clammy Hand. You can add an extra few dice to rally, right? So that's okay. This is fine. And Loon Touched. If it's not a wizard, it gets Wizard 1. Otherwise, you get +1 casting. So Fight Another Day, it's still nice with Manglers. It does synergize well with Curse Splat. If you remember, Manglers have I think it's a Rampage. After they charge, you can roll up to 10 dice, and every 4-up is immortal. So it's a pretty decent horde buster. Like, if you can charge in and deal more than 2-up D3 mortals, it's pretty cool, you know? And there's no chance of failure here, right? 2-up D3 mortals means that 1 in 3 chance you do 0 mortals. The average of 2-up D3 mortals isn't 2 mortals, it's less than that. Because it's 0, 2, and 3. So it's 5 divided by 3 is our average, which is, you know, less than 2. So if you can deal like 3, 4, 5 mortals on a charge, it's very good. So it does synergize well with Manglers with Curse Splat. It also will keep infantry heroes alive, I guess. You could consider putting this also on a Trog boss, because Trog boss has that ability, Shepherd of Destruction. And to use Shepherd of Destruction, what it does is it gives +1 attacks to units wholly within 12, I think. I'll have to double check that. But it gives +1 attacks, but the Trog boss has to be in combat. So the Trog boss can be in combat, use his Shepherd of Destruction, and then fight another day and move away. So I'm pretty sure this works, but you can do that. But overall, it's not as strong as Loon Touched. It's easily the best in a manifestation meta. More casts means more banishments, means more manifestations. And putting it on a Fungoid Cave Shaman means that you get +1 to casting, which is really good because a lot of our spells cast on 7s and 6s, and same with our manifestations. So if you can activate a Place of Power, and you could have the Arachnarok Scrap Scuttle manifestation giving you 1 additional cast, like 1 additional power level, you can have 2 casts on +2, which is very good at getting out those manifestations when you need them. Absolutely. So, and then you can also do things like put it on a Bounder boss. There's lots of spells, as we'll see, that you need to be like wholly within 12 in this spell lore. So being able to put it on a very mobile unit that can run around and throw manifestations out really aggressively in your opponent's face, like Mork's Mighty Mushroom, for example, is quite good. So additional casts on little guys or +1 to cast on a Fungoid Cave Shaman, both are good options, depending on what kind of playstyle you're going for, what kind of list that you have. But easily right now, Loon Touched is going to be the best one by far. Loon Touched is better on a Loon Boss on Mangler Squig than Fight Another Day, in my opinion. There's also the Clammy Hand, right, which we talked about, which is extra dice for Rally. It's not terrible, but I think it's the weakest of the 3. The only time I think you would really want to take this is if you were going to go for like Mass Herd, Mass, you know, Stabas, whatever, Fanatics, like Reinforced Fanatics, and only really if you're going up against some shooting and you want to be able to, you know, recur these models before they get into combat. And that's kind of it, right? I think with the Clammy Hand, you can get your Stabas up to 10 dice. And they're 1 model each, right? So it's like bringing back 5 is not nothing. It's just that they're weak, right? Artifacts Power. So we have 3. We have the Clammy Cowl, subtract 1 from hit rolls that target this unit. We also have the Leering Git Shield. This one's interesting. Each time an unmodified hit roll for an attack that targets this unit is a 1. Inflict 1 mortal damage on the attacking unit after the attack ability has been resolved. Obviously, this is better the more dice that your opponent is throwing at you. And then we have Backstabber's Blade, which is on a 2-up, inflict an amount of mortal damage equal to the roll. So this is it's a 2-up D6 amount of mortal damage. But the problem with Backstabber's Blade is that it's only once per turn. So the fact that it's once per battle, end of any turn. So the once per battle thing totally ruins it for me. It's like you can do a D6 once. It's like, well, like, I don't know, like, if it was the end of my turn, every turn, I could see that being interesting. Putting it on, like, a Dankhold, who's just going to suddenly throw out a 2-up D6 at the end of every turn. Even if it was at the end of my turn, maybe. Like, if I could get 2 or 3 2-up D6s out of this, but you can't, right? The Leering Git Shield is really interesting to me on monsters. So you could throw it on a Dankhold, Trog Boss, or on a Loon Boss on Mangler Squig, and you just throw it into your opponent's big infantry line. Like imagine a Loon Boss on Mangler Squig with this Leering Git Shield. So you charge in the Loon Boss on Mangler Squig, you deal your impact mortals, and this is like right up the center of the board into your opponent's reinforced brick of infantry. You smash in, you deal some mortal wounds, maybe you get a chance to fight. And then afterwards, your opponent's like, I'm going to throw 40 dice at you. I'm going to throw 80 dice at you, whatever. And you're like, cool. 80 dice times whatever it is. So I'm not very good at math. Times 1.7. It's like, okay, that's about 14 mortal wounds on average back into your unit. It's like, that's a lot of damage. So if you have like something, if you have something tanky, you know, or like I said, a Trog boss who wants to be in combat anyway, what you're essentially going to do to your opponent, a Trog boss works really well with this because the Trog boss wants to be in combat anyway, and sort of wants to be in the middle of the map, like where a big brick of rock cuts is. Like this is where the Trog boss is going to be anyway. And so if you throw the Trog boss in and you're like, just remember, I have Leering Git Shield. Any attacks that you put into me, right, I'm going to throw mortals back at you. Your opponent's going to be like, oh, okay, no problem. They're just going to ignore the Trog boss, right? But because they don't want to take a whole bunch of mortal wounds, right? You're not going to deal this damage. You're just going to prevent the Trog boss from getting attacked. So then it's like, well, the Trog boss is going to survive. He's going to sit there and continue to get his buff off. If your opponent throws any chip damage at him, he's going to just heal it off, right? That's pretty annoying. Another cool trick that you can do as well is you can do exactly what I just said, right? Throw rock cuts and a Trog boss into combat. But then on your turn, you can do a real sneaky play and retreat your rock guts, so it's only the Trog boss that's left. And if your opponent is playing like Daughters of Cain or Brutes or any other army that has a huge volume of dice, you're just gonna be like, yeah, dude, well, you have to attack, right? You can't not attack. You can not pile in if you don't want to, but with a 3-inch combat range, it's like that Trog boss is going to eat so many dice, and he's going to throw so many mortal wounds back at your opponent. It can be a really sneaky play, right? I don't know. It's just interesting. And then the Clammy Cowl, which again is -1 to hit rolls, is okay. It's good on everybody. I'd say that it's a totally legit choice. I shouldn't say it's okay. I should say that it's good. -1 to hit against targets is interesting. But it's the obvious only choice for infantry heroes, right? Because like the Leering Git Shield, you're not going to be throwing your Fungoid Cave Shaman into combat like that, right? You're just not going to do that. If it's on a Bounder boss or a what is he called? A Loon boss on Giant Cave Squig. I like to call him a Bounder boss because that's what he is. -1 to hit for a Bounder boss is pretty good, right? You're not fighting those huge bricks of infantry. You're probably fighting your opponent's cavalry, maybe a monster, so -1 to hit is really good. And if you're playing something like Scragrot, Trug, and a Fungoid Cave Shaman, sure, you throw the Clammy Cowl on the Fungoid Cave Shaman because nothing else is going to be of any particular use or interest, right? Overall, pretty good though, right? I like the Git Shield personally. I'll take the Git Shield on like a Trog boss for sure. That's where I'm at for my lists. So lore, we have Lore of the Clammy Dank. So we have a few different spells here. We have Sneaky Distraction, cast on a 7. You'll notice that all 3 of these spells cast on 7s, which is why having +1 to cast, as I was saying before, is pretty useful. So Sneaky Distraction, you have to be wholly within 12 inches, but you get 1 from hit rolls. Okay, -1 to hit is a pretty strong debuff against destruction armies, against any armies that are sort of hitting on 4s. You know, if you do this against Iron Jaws, or even if you do this against Gits, or Ogres, or whatever, -1 to hit is pretty good. However, yep, so let's keep reading. Spore Maw, cast on 7 again. So this one, you pick 3 targets that are within 12, enemy targets, visible enemy targets that are within 12, not wholly within 12, and then you deal a 2-up D3 mortal damage to all of them. So it's 3 times 2-up D3 potentially. And then Hand of Gork, this used to just be like, pick a unit wholly within 24 and teleport it anywhere on the map. And now you have to be wholly within 12 inches of the caster, and you have to set up wholly within 24 inches of the caster. I mean, the fact that it's wholly within 24 inches of the caster is kind of rough. It really, really limits where you're able to stick your, the units that you're teleporting. It's pretty good early on, where you can like move like a unit of rock cuts like forward up the table significantly and try to make it difficult for your opponent to get onto objectives or even really get out of their deployment zone. So this also combos really well with Fight Another Day and Loon Touched on like a Mangler or a Bounder boss, right? It's like, okay, you crash in with your Mangler, you deal your mortal wounds, and then you fight another day, and then on the next turn you just teleport away somewhere else on the map, and then do it all over again. It's kind of a neat little interaction. You can also use it on like a bounder boss. You crash in with bounders, you deal a bunch of damage, you kill something, and then maybe half the bounders are dead. So then you just teleport the bounder boss to your other unit of bounders to, you know, do the whole thing all over again. Yeah. Sneaky distraction. So being wholly within 12 inches is hard. This is where Loon Touched is good, right? If you have a Mangler and you cast Sneaky Distraction and then you crash into something, giving -1 to hit against, you know, everything that's wholly within 12 of him is quite strong. Like, you can give -1 to hit in a big AoE. This is very different than having, like, you know, Scragrot at the very far back, or same thing with like a Fungoid, and your enemies just aren't wholly within 12, right? Same thing with Spore Maw. Like, if you can put Loon Touched on a cavalry piece and run him in and do 3 times 2 up D3 mortals, like, pretty good. All 3 of these spells, in my opinion, are almost better cast on units that actually want to get into the fight. So this is incentivizing you to get your wizards, like, up into the mix, not obviously in combat, but in a position where they're going to be able to actually cast these spells. Gitz don't want to keep their wizards, like, hiding at the far back of the map like they used to. I remember just, like, always having a Fungoid Cave Shaman hanging out by my Loon Shrine way at the back of the map, hiding literally, like, inside the Loon Shrine. So that those days are done, right? We want to be able to get up into the fight. Gobblepalooza, same thing, right? Like, Gobblepalooza is great for this exact thing. We're way more comfortable losing a Gobblepalooza than we are losing a Scragrot or a Fungoid, right? Or any other hero, really, for that matter, right? Because Gobblepalooza can come back out of the Loon Shrine, which is amazing. Let's talk about our dank manifestations. So we have 3. We have Mork's Mighty Mushroom. Sorry, we have 4. Mork's Mighty Mushroom, which casts on a 6. The Malevolent Moon, which casts on a 7. Scuttle Tide, which casts on a 6. And Arachna Cauldron, which casts on a 7. If we wanted to actually look at these manifestations, we just have to zip all the way down to the bottom. Okay, so let's start with Scuttle Tide. So Scuttle Tide is a fantastic let's start with the best one. We'll start with Scrap Scuttle's Arachna Cauldron. It moves, right? It moves slowly, but it moves. And it fights, not very well, but it does. It's not really meant to be in combat at all. What it does have is this ability, Blessing of the Cauldron. Pick a Gloomspite Gitz wizard within 1 inch of this manifestation. Add 1 of the target's power level until the start of the next turn. So what you want to do with this with Scrap Scuttle, like what the play is you want to use your Fungoid Cave Shaman's Mushroom ability, where he gets +1 power level for a turn right away, and then cast this Cauldron immediately. And then you still have another spell that you can have with the Fungoid, right? Because it's like you used your extra spell to get an extra spell, which means that turn you're going to be casting 3 spells, which is pretty cool. So use it right away. If you're playing a Fungoid, eat your mushroom, cast the spell. Especially if it's a Loon Touch Fungoid, because you're getting +1 to cast, right? Very good. Next, we have Mork's Mighty Mushroom. So Mork's Mighty Mushroom is essentially a shooting unit, because it does things in the shooting phase. It doesn't move, which means you can set it up right in your opponent's face. You can set it up right next to a whole group of units. It casts on a 6, and what it does is pick 3 enemy units within 6 inches of this manifestation, and then you do a 5-up Horde Buster, right? You roll a number of dice equal to the number of models in that unit that are within 6 inches. So it's not the whole unit, it's just all the models that are within 6 inches, but on a 5-up it deals a mortal wound, and it's super annoying. You'll throw it right in your opponent's face, right in the middle of the scrum. Again, you want some wizards up in the mix. You don't want them hiding in the back. You want them up in the mix. Throw a Mork's Mighty Mushroom right in your opponent's face, and it's like, oh, that unit, I roll 6 dice. Oh, you take 2 mortals. This unit, I'm only going to roll 1 dice. Oh, you take nothing. And this unit, I'm going to do 8 dice, and you're going to take 3 mortals. Like, it's a lot, and it happens in any shooting phase, which, as the Honest Wargamer likes to say, every shooting phase. So it adds up a lot, and if your opponent is fighting it to get rid of it, you're like, okay, I'm just going to throw it in your face again the next time. Fantastic manifestation. Then we have the Malevolent Moon. The Malevolent Moon, it does fight, but if you see, it only has 1 attack, so it doesn't really fight at all. All that it moves. It has a fast 12-inch move. Bad save, bad health. Like, if this thing gets in combat, it's going to die, and it's going to deal no damage. But all that it really does is give out light of the bad moon wholly within 12 inches of it. In 3rd edition, Scragrot used to give a 12-inch aura, so of light of the bad moon. So it meant that you could have Scragrot like somewhere else on the map where the light of the bad moon wasn't, like away from the quadrant in which you started with the malevolent moon, away from the Loon Shrine, and Scragrot could still have a 12-inch aura of the moon all by himself. He can't do that on his own anymore, but just by casting this manifestation you can do that, which is fantastic if you're playing a castle of rock guts, getting that +1 save somewhere else on the map where the bad moon isn't. So then that's pretty much its best use. I mean, manifestations are worth casting, period, but if you're doing this for non-rock gut reasons, the value that you're getting is just going to be a lot less. And then last but not least, we have Scuttletide. Now, as we sort of talked about a little bit already, where is it? Spiders aren't very good overall. So this manifestation can move 8 inches, so pretty good. 6-up save is bad, 6 health is bad. It does have a 6-up ward, right? But it's not going to be, it's not going to survive a ton. It does have 8 attacks with crit mortal, so you'll be doing a few mortal wounds, which is fine. It can fly over terrain. It's a huge, awkward shape, so it's kind of hard to maneuver. And you're probably not going to get the advantage out of Endless Terror, which is it has a 4-up ward while it's wholly within 12 of an Arachnarok unit. But it's a manifestation, right? It's a manifestation, so it's good because it's a manifestation. I would say that if I was going to order them and how good they are, I would probably order them as they're appearing on the screen right now. Oh, there's no art on this slide. Oh, that's a bummer. So I would say that the Arachna Cauldron's probably the best because it lets you get more manifestations, right? I also put a note here that says Leapfrog. Because this doesn't move the turn it comes into play, what you want to do is you want to cast it in front of the caster and then have the caster move over it but still be within 1 inch. Make sure that you cast the Arachna Cauldron sorry, pardon me, where your wizard is going to be moving the next turn, if that makes sense. You want to leapfrog over it, because otherwise you'll walk away from it and you won't get the benefit of it. Mork's Mighty Mushroom, again, is the next best one. Just mortal wounds, very good, right? It's super annoying. Malevolent Moon is good when you need it, and the Scuttletide is solid because it's a manifestation. You want to get a lot of casts in Gitz. There's a lot of spells to cast, right? There's a lot of things that we can do, so having some, like, 3 casts at least is nice. Let's talk about Trog's Trog Herd. So I spent my day yesterday going over Trog's Trog Herd and looking at it in all of its everything about it. Let's have a look. This is my final note sheet. I did this on paper too, which is crazy. So let's you know what? Let's actually just look at it here. Armies of Renown. Okay. There's a lot to this, right? These things have a lot. Trog's Trog Herd. There's a lot of stuff here. So you can Trug has to be the general, okay? And then you can play Dank Holds, Trog Bosses, Fell Waters, and Rock Guts, and nothing else. You'll notice here on this roster option, it does not say the Loon Shrine, so you can't play the Loon Shrine, which is a huge blow. They still get Herd Healing, which means all the Rock Gut. This is the same as the sub-faction for the trolls in standard Gloomspite Gitz. So they still heal D3 after they fight. They have this ability called Living Landmark, which is combos with Broken Slumber. Essentially, you can pick a friendly Trog Herd unit to be deployed in reserve, and then you can deploy them later outside of 9 of enemies and wholly within 3 inches of a piece of terrain. So it's like a early game, you know, haha, there's trolls out on the battlefield somewhere. Pretty cool, good for grabbing objectives, things like this. Aura of Haywire Magic. All of Trug's ley lines apply to all Trugs. All trolls on the table. So whatever you get, whatever ley line you get for Trug, just applies table-wide. So this is the 5-up ward, the +1 rend, the +1 attack, right? The defense against shooting. All of that just applies to all trolls everywhere on the table. Which is nice, because with Living Landmark, you're going to throw some trolls out on the table. And they have this Moon Toughened Hide, which means that they, in battle rounds 2 and 3, they get melee attacks against your trolls get -1 rend. This is kind of the same as +1 save, but not against shooting, right? So it's kind of like +1 save, because remember, because you don't get the rest of the Gloomspite Gitz battle traits, so you don't get +1 to save under Light of the Bad Moon, right? We're not getting any benefits for being under the Light of the Bad Moon. We don't even have a Bad Moon, right? So it's like we sort of get this in lieu of it, which is almost as good, but again, it's only on rounds 2 and 3, and so there's no way for us to get that +1 to save / -1 rend on rounds 4 and 5. Then a heroic trait. So both of these heroic traits and artifacts of power have to go on a Trog boss. There's no other option. So the unit can fight twice, but the second time it fights last. Okay, like, sure. Not the worst, but not, like, a Trog boss doesn't hit that hard, so. And then also the Trog boss can get +3 to charge, so you can get him into combat when you need him to get into combat to use that Shepherd of Destruction. Like, okay, sure, right, fine. So the pros. So Living Landmark is cool. Throwing some units out onto the battlefield super early in the game and surprising your opponent, grabbing an objective, denying a tactic, things like this, pretty strong, right? You can. It's a little bit of a gotcha. When do you throw out those units? I think it's, let's see, your movement phase. So you can do it in your movement phase. So you can't do it on your opponent's turn. You're still getting the herd healing, which is nice. So it's something that you're not losing. And you're probably going to be a 2-drop list. You're probably going to be a Trug and a Dankhold, right? So you're going to be 2 drops. You're going to be able to, like, you're essentially going to make your opponent go first, and then you're going to pop some trolls out on your turn and have some fun, right? I guess theoretically, you could do Broken Slumber or Living Landmark, right? That has not been deployed. You could do it with a Dankhold and then give them, add 3 to charge rolls. So you could pop them out of terrain and then have it be a 6-inch charge. So that's kind of cool, right? That's like a pro for sure. Especially in a 2-drop list. You're like, okay, my opponent goes first, and then my Dankhold Trog boss is going to come out somewhere and do a charge at them, right? Like that's kind of cool. You could also Living Landmark with Kragnos too and throw out some Rock Guts, you know, and then in the charge phase, it's like, well, they're 9 inches away, but you have an average of 10 with 3d6 charge. Never mind, you can't use Kragnos. That's the thing, right? So let's look at some cons. You're losing the +1 save for trolls, right? And so I'm just going to compare this to like a Gloomspite Gitz trolls list, right? So losing the +1 save hurts. +1 save turn 1, turn 4, turn 5. And the +1 to save is better than -1 rend against melee because it also applies to shooting attacks as well. There's no wizards. The best you can do is an artifact of power. Sorry, a place of power, so you can get an unbind. That's the best you can do. But there's no wizards. We are in a manifestation meta. If you are not banishing your opponent's manifestations off the table, you're gonna have a bad time. No wizards at all. That sucks. Trug will have a large regiment. Trug has to be the general, and you're probably going to have at least 2, but probably 3 units in Trug's regiment. As a Cruel Boys player with priority target on Bolt Boys, it just means that I'm going to have +1 to hit, +1 to wound against a lot of different stuff in your army. It also means that you're not able to deny the Slay the Entourage battle tactic as easily as if you had, like, you know, Scragrot and 1 other unit in his regiment. So your opponent's going to be able to take full advantage of Honor Guard and of Slay the Entourage battle tactic. That's a little tricky. That's definitely a con. You're a very elite army. You might struggle with taking objectives. You don't have a lot of control in the army as a whole because you just don't have a large model count. So, you know, and you're also slow, so you might have a really hard time taking objectives on certain maps. Like if you're playing on a map that has 6 objectives, good luck, right? There's a lot riding on Trug's rolls, right? Because Trug, it's like essentially maybe the best part of the entire, like the core rules is the fact that Trug's abilities go table wide. So the way that this works is you roll 3 dice, and then you pick one of the dice, right, to use. So I roll 3 dice, I roll a 3, a 4, or a 5, and then I pick either ability 3, 4, or 5 to use. So if there's only one that I want, like if I'm like, I really need the 5-up ward this turn, there's a 42% chance that you get it. If there's 2 that you're okay with, like adding 1 rend and adding 1 attack, like you're like, this is a damage turn, there's a 70% chance that you get one of those 2. And if there's 3 that you're okay with getting, like and there's only 3 that are really worth getting, to be honest. Like if we look at Trug's actual thing, the 1 is just a fail, right? Oh, look at that, I crossed it out. I didn't know I could do that. So adding 1 to the attack characteristic of melee weapons, table wide, is very good. Easily the best one. There's a 42% chance on any turn that you get it. The next best one is maybe the last one with a 6, where everything on the table has a 6-up ward. This is redundant in the case of Rock Guts. So your Fell Waters are really going to appreciate this 5-up ward. Fell Waters deal more damage than Rock Guts, but they have a 5-up save, I think. Pretty sure it's a 5-up. Yeah, they have a 5-up base save, and they have no ward. So if you can give them a ward, all of a sudden, like they're fighting and healing and warding off damage, and all of a sudden, Fell Waters love this. Okay. The next best one's probably the Rend, right? Melee weapons. So this is again table wide. Fell Waters don't like this as much because they deal. Actually, they like it too. Adding a Rend is good. But then the other ones, right? This unit can unbind as if it had Wizard 1. So I guess this is where you can get some unbinds in Trog Herd, as if you get this, but you're not picking this because you don't want it. You don't care about an unbind, dude. You want extra attacks. You want wards. You want rend, right? Like, you don't want this. And then the last one is subtract 1 from hit rolls for shooting attacks, right? Okay. Like, super situational. Super situational, right? It's fine. But not really good. So realistically, on your turn, there's an 88% chance that you get the ward, the rend, or the +1 attacks. There's a 70% chance that you'll get an offensive one, and a 42% chance you'll get the 5-up ward. There's a lot riding on Trug. You also have another con. You have no shrine, no recursion. You don't get to bring anything back, right? That's it. You're also a slow army with no cavalry, right? You're just all in heavy, slow infantry. Overall, I'll pass. The only serious pro that Trug's Trog Herd has is the Living Landmark and the board-wide ley line. That's really the 2 pros. But if you're really lucky, as we discussed with the percentages, and you manage to get trolls into a really good position using those sneaky deployment tricks, you can certainly make a game out of this army. Like, it's not terrible. It's not like bad. You can definitely make a game of it. However, the lack of any wizards, cavalry, the +1 save from the Bad Moonlight, and the Loon Shrine's recursion, those are all super serious blows. If you can manage the 12-inch auras with Trug, and you can, instead of doing Living Landmark or whatever it's called, if you just want to teleport units with a Hand of Gork, right? You're not really losing anything, right? Just manage your auras, right? Like, what are you really losing by not taking Trug's Trog Herd? Not a lot. Just manage your auras. You know, teleport things if you want to get into some sneaky positions. And that's it. You know, the artifacts of power are better. Just having diversity in your list is good. And wizards, recursion, everything. It's like, Trug's Trog Herd is going to be a pass for me. Let's talk about command points. So all-out attack is going to be super key in this army because everything hits on a 4. Look at this. Just try to, I know this is going to be fast, but look at this. 4s, 4s, 4s and 5s, 4s, 4s, 3s, ooh, 4s, 4s, all 4s. This is sneaky snufflers, right? 4s, 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 like, you get my point. It's like 4s for days, right? Kragnos hits on 3s. But we're definitely going to want to use all-out attack a lot. If you're using all-out attack all the time, that's okay. It's going to help you with your damage. Then, which is another reason, just as a little bit of a side note, it's another reason why the Bounder boss is so good. We'll talk about him here in a sec. Power Through. I mean, Power Through is fantastic. It's very good, especially with Rock Guts because they're slow and they have a high wound count. So they can crash into something that has 4 wounds and then they can power through and get even more mobility out of it. It's very good. Countercharge is an A tier, I think, in everybody's army. Let's be real. It's either an A tier or an S tier. When it's good, it's really good. Denying tactics, taking objectives, all kinds of things, really strong. Redeploy is also really strong, particularly with Rock Guts, just because they're so slow. Redeploying on your opponent's turn and just moving further up the board, further to where you want to get, is going to be good in slow armies all the time. Magical Intervention is also always good. It's particularly good if you're trying to cast a manifestation on your opponent's turn. So, for example, if you wanted to cast the Arachna Cauldron, right, on your opponent's turn, it means that on your turn, you're going to be able to take advantage immediately of that +1 to cast. Casting manifestations on your opponent's turn is really good because they will get to then move on your turn. So if you're like, here's Jaws, I cast on my turn. On your turn, Jaws is coming at you. It's really scary. Very, very scary. So having a +1 caster is really good, because don't forget, with Magical Intervention, you get -1 to cast. So if you have +1 to cast, and the manifestation's on a 6, that's golden, right? That's golden. Take a place of power, right? Suddenly it's on a 5. Very, very good. Even on your opponent's turn, very, very good. Rally is also good, but I think it's really only good against shooting. If your opponent is shooting at your bounder, shooting at your herd, shooting at your stuff before you get a chance to get into combat, then use it. So it's B tier because it's situational. At the double and forward to victory, both are B tier. Auto run 6 if you need to, right? And reroll a charge if you need to. I can't think of any run and charge in this book at all, right? And so at the double it sort of loses value if you don't have, like for example, in Ironjaw's, Ragers have run and charge, and so they move 4 inches, and then if you auto run them 6 inches, they can go 10 inches and then charge. With Mighty Destroyers, they can go 13 inches and then charge. So then suddenly, auto run 6 becomes way better if you can run and charge. All out defense, probably not that needed in this army, to be honest. Your Rock Guts are not needing more defense when they heal and they get +1 save and they have right, like they don't need extra defense. And the small things like bounders and herd and other like kind of bad save units, they aren't going to benefit tons from having +1 to save, right? So imagine this, if your bounders crash into something, the idea is that they're going to be fighting first and dealing their charge +1 damage, so that the way that they defend themselves is by destroying the thing that they charged into with charge +1 damage and all-out attack, right? So they have a 5-up save. So if your opponent has 2 rend, do you really want to use all-out defense just to have 6-up saves, right? So it's like, it's good when you need it, but it's not a go-to. If you're new to Gloomspite Gitz and you're not sure what command points to use all-out attack every single time. So that's 2, and then either power through or magical intervention, and you'll be good every time, right? You're like, I don't know what to use. Well, all-out attack. Use all-out attack. No problem. Battle tactics. Gitz actually score really well for tactics. Do Not Waver is a really good one because we have lots of really tanky units. I should probably just put these all should just be pretty much A tier. So Do Not Waver is good. This is where you have two units have to fight and no units have to die. So we're either playing with like punchy units or really tanky units. So it's relatively easy to fight a couple things and have nothing die. If you're playing trolls, if you're playing squigs, it's a little bit harder, which is why this should probably just straight up just be, it should just be A tier. I'm not sure if there are any like real S tiers for this army. Take the flanks is good, right? We have good cavalry. You can take the flanks. Take their land is good. We have good cavalry. We can go dive deep into our opponent's zone with our cavalry units, fly over them, and take their land. Decannon approach is also really good. Having a 3rd unit into the fight is pretty easy to do, especially if you have some Boygrat bounders or hoppers or herd or some other unit that's really fast, right? Just get them into the fight, kill the thing, right? Easy, easy, easy. Seize the center is also pretty good. Rock Guts tend to seize the center almost on their own. It's usually at the end of the fight, like round 4, round 5. It's normally Rock Guts that are left in the center, so it's pretty easy to have Rock Guts and then some foot hero or something behind the Rock Guts to seize the center. Very good. Attack on 2 fronts, also very good, right? Taking objectives away from our opponents is not the hardest thing to do when you have like bounders and bounder bosses and, Scragrots, Fangs of the Bad Moon, hiding in the back. Like, pretty easy to do. Slay the Entourage is B tier, of course, because it depends on our opponent. It depends on how you know, many units they have in their general's regiment, so it'll be situationally good, score this when you can, and then time to get stuck in is just F. The only time this is actually good, in my opinion, is if you're playing Kragnos. If you're playing Kragnos, then this is possible, right? Being wholly within and then wholly outside and fighting, like, you can do that with Kragnos, but that's pretty much it, but I kind of leave it at F tier. For Honor Guard, priority target is really nice on Bounders. +1 to hit, +1 to wound. On a fast cavalry unit that's going to seek out and destroy a target that you want to kill is good. If your opponent has a general that you want slain with Bounders, or if your opponent has something in their general's regiment that you want to kill with Bounders, then putting priority target on Bounders is good. If that isn't the case, Bodyguard makes rock guts actually impossible to kill. You can put Bodyguard, like if you have like a Trog boss or a Trug that's the general, and you're like, man, my opponent does a lot of damage, like mortal wounds, let's say. Well, if with rock guts and Bodyguard, you can just plant yourself in the middle of the map and be like, come at me, bro. I'm gonna do this against Nighthaunt tonight with Kragnos. I'm gonna put, you know, 6 rock guts in his regiment, and then it's gonna be Bodyguard rock guts with Kragnos. Good luck. Good luck shifting me from the center of the table, or good luck shifting me from wherever it is I want to be. And special assignment is good if the other two suck, right? You can also put priority targets on rock guts. If your opponent has like a big brick, like if they're Nurgle or something and they have a bunch of plague bears or whatever they're called that are going to sit in the middle of the table, you can put priority target on a unit of rock guts and just have +1 to hit, +1 to wound against their, you know, like anvil unit in the center. And then, yeah, special assignment is just good if everything sucks, right? It's like, well, the Bounders want to kill this unit over here, but it's not on my general's regiment, but it's a war machine. Done. +1 red war machine. +1 red on the charge to blow it up. Done. Right? Easy. A note of internal balance and Spider Fang. Why are Spider Fangs so bad? Why are Spider Fangs so bad? It's a serious question, and I don't really have the answer. Spider Fang, I was talking to a friend of mine, Conan, shout out to Conan, and he is a very skilled player, and he is a very skilled Spider Fang player. In 3rd edition, Spider Fang weren't very good, and Conan was still able to win lots of games. I think at Northern Wastes GT, the last one we did at 3rd edition a year ago, I think he placed in the top handful with Spider Fang. He's just a good player. So I messaged him and I said, have you played Spider, you know, any tips for Spiders this edition? And this is what he said, quote, they removed every single buff / spell that would affect Spiders, except Speed of the Spider Gods, which only affects 1 unit now. It's been rough trying to get them to work cohesively again. Leaning heavily into magic helps, as they're the only source of +1 native casting outside of heroic traits. But again, it's like even he, you know, he's a very good player, and even he is saying like it's hard to make them work. And if we just wanted to take a look really quick, right, it's like Spider Riders. Okay, 10-inch move, wall crawler, which means they fly over terrain. The bows are trash. But look, they're hitting on 4s and wounding on 4s and 5s with no rend, right? It's like, okay, like geez, like we're throwing 10 dice for crit mortals, you know, and even on, like, it's not a high enough volume of dice. And even if you're critting on 5s and 6s, it's still not that many, right? It's still not that many for 1 damage crits. Like, they're not doing enough. The web spinner shaman's actually sick. The web slingshot ability is really cool. On a 2-up, you just like kind of like you Spider-Man yourself between other big spiders, or other spiders or terrain, right? Like it's super cool, awesome ability. But then he's got the Speed of the Spider God, right? You can run and or charge. Okay, so there is run and charge in the book, just with spiders. But okay, like, this doesn't really help with the Skitterstrand Arachnarok coming out of his, like, null deployment, right? So, it's like, okay, run and charge, sure. But then it's like the Arachnarok spiders, like, even the big ones, you know, like, look at the dice, 4s and 5s, right? This is 3s and 2s, but only 1 rend. 3 damage is good, but the crit mortals doesn't really matter if we're throwing 4 dice. It's gonna be super inconsistent, right? It's just not dealing a lot of damage, and they're really expensive. And, you know, yeah, I don't know. Like, look at this rampage, right? Pick 3 enemy units within 1 inch of this unit to be the target. Okay, roll D3 for each target, so it's a 2-up D3. Like, sure, fine. Like, it's not bad, but they're just so expensive. And they're so like, and this is the +1 to cast ability that he was talking about, I think, here. Add 1 to cast equals for friendly Spider Fang wizards. So it's just Spider Fang wizards. If this just said wizards, we might be able to talk about this unit. But we can't. They're not that fast. They're not that tanky. 4-up saves, no wards, right? And their bases are so big. They're so clunky. You know, like being able to fly over terrain doesn't matter if you can't get over the terrain because your base is so big. You know, they need a refresh is what they need, which is kind of what I think is going to happen. You know, why is Spider Fang so bad? I think that they're disincentivizing people from buying these models right now because they're going to come out with like a brand new refresh. I'm super curious about if they're going to release like a whole, if they're going to split Gitz into 2. It seems to me like that's like a long-term plan for all the destruction factions. Not all of them, I guess not Sons of Behemoth. But if you wanted more destruction factions, it's like make Cruel Boys and Iron Jaws 2 books, right? You want more destruction factions, make Squigs and, or make, not even Squigs and Trolls, take your Gloomspite Gitz faction and split it into 2. Underground, above ground. Spiders are not underground creatures. They're not. Squigs and Trolls are underground creatures. Spiders make webs where there's insects. They catch things above ground. The closest that you'll get is like trapdoor spiders, right? Which is like your Skidastrand or Arachnarok. But another reason that I think that we're going to get... This is the only unit, by the way, the Snarlfang Riders in the book that doesn't have a keyword that gives it anything under the light of the bad moon. It has no Moon Clan, it has no Squig, it has no Troll, it has no Spider Fang. This unit has no abilities under the light of the bad moon. It has a Git Mob keyword. Okay? Where we're going to get more Git Mob. Right? This is the start of this edition. We're going to get more Git Mob. Split your Gloomspite Gitz book into Trogs and Squigs with Moon Clan, like Stabbers and Shooters and all that stuff. And on the other hand, call it Git Mob. Do like Git Mob and Skidastrand. And then we have like these Wolf Riders, right, with like carts and chariots, more like a fantasy, like goblins kind of thing. And then spiders. And then make the bases smaller and make them better, please. So right now, another big concern with Gloomspite Gitz is the internal balance. It's that right now, like I was saying before, Trolls are the only thing when I'm recording this video that are really playable. But it's going to get better. It's going to get better because Squigs are actually good. Right? I think that Herd is good. I think Bounders are good. I think that Manglers can be good if they get reduced in points. The problem with Manglers is they just check out their War Scroll here. 5-up save, 14 wounds, unpredictable movement, bad to hit, bad to wound, bad rend. Right? They just struggle. But they are interesting, and they are a beautiful model. So if they find the right points, I think that they could be playable. But yeah, it's not that bad, right? Like Bounders right now are really good. I think if Hoppers come down a little bit in points, I think that they're sick. I think that internal balance. I don't think that Spiders are going to be playable until the new book comes out, until they try to sell us a new round of models, right? I think Spiders are going to be bad until then. But I think that Squigs can definitely see some play. We'll see some points come down for Squigs, some points go up for Trolls, and I think people are gonna. I think the book is gonna balance itself out. So as of the making of this video, I would say these are some key units. Rock Guts, let's be real, are easily the best. They're probably the only S tier unit in the book right now. They're very, very, very strong. You want to win games, just throw a whole bunch of Rock Guts on the table. Your opponent's not gonna be able to deal with it. I really personally love a Dankhold. I really like the weight and smash ability. Being able to move an additional 6 inches and then bash into your opponent before combat has even happened is a very strong ability. Anything in this game that gives you movement is really good. The Trog Boss is also good. He's a key unit because if you want to take Rock Guts, he's a good unit to unlock those in a regiment, right? And he's good. He can take some good artifacts of power and heroic traits and stuff. So the Bounders and the Bounder Boss is very, very good. The Bounder Boss, what he does is he gives the Bounders +1 to hit when they charge in, right? So the Bounders are going to get 3s to hit. I think it's just with their Poke and Lance, because because, you know, it's companion, right? But getting +1 to hit with charge +1 damage, and then special assignment, right? You can be 3s to hit, 4s to wound, and they throw quite a bit of dice. If there's 10 of them, they're throwing 30 dice. So it's a lot. So he's very, very good. Casters. Scragrot is very good. 2 casts for 1 drop. Good. The Fungoid Cave Shaman can be very good because he can have +1 to cast. Very good. And Gobblepalooza is certainly worth looking at because he's a caster in a manifestation meta that doesn't take a drop. He can also come back out of the Loon Shrine. So they're also quite tanky. Gobblepalooza starts the game with a 4-up ward. And on turn 2, he's got a 5-up ward. And then for every turn after that, he has a 6-up ward. Right? So you can throw this. It's got 15 wounds with a 4-up ward turn 1. Play him really aggressively. Let him cast some manifestations and then die. And then just bring 3 more back out of the Loon Shrine. You still get your spell. Right? If you have 1 model left, it's still Wizard 1. Doesn't matter. So, a fantastic unit, this guy. Again, spells without drops is very good. Squigs and the Squig Boss, I think, are much better than I originally valued them at. So, they're going to be key if you're going to play Squigs. You're going to be playing Squig Boss and all kinds of Squigs. And this includes, like, Hoppers, too. Hoppers are also good. I think they're just a little bit overcosted. I think that there's definitely play with Hoppers. Let me just pull them up here really quick. I think that playing Hoppers with, what's it called? Sneaky Snufflers, right? If you reinforce Hoppers, there's 20 of them, which means there's 40 wounds. 40 wounds on a 5-up save is a anvil, right? It's an anvil. So, yep. And also moving over, this ability they have is actually quite strong, right? Roll a die for each model in this unit that passes across the target and a 4-up. So if you pass 10 or 20 over an opponent, right? It's like 20 dice on a 4-up. Like, you could do a reinforced, I'm going to do this boing, boing, boing 1 time in the game, but I'm going to do it right at the beginning before we've even had any combat. And I'm going to deal, like, you know, roll a die for each model in this unit. Like, they're fast. So if you can, like, re-roll this random move characteristic, right? Like, I don't know, you could do a lot of scariness. You could also, like, auto run them 6, so you can get lots of movement to make sure that everything passes over. So if you're passing like 20 and you're rolling 24 ups, like, come on, man, that's a lot of mortal wounds. And then again, like, they don't fight amazing, but they do throw a lot of dice. With a Squigalange subfaction, this is going to be 4 attacks each, and then all out attack them. Like, these guys are good. I just think they're overpriced right now by just a little bit. If they came down just a little bit, I think that they would be good. Fanatics are also terrifying if you're looking for, like, more of a Moon Clan way of playing the game. Fanatics are really good. They are good with Kragnos because you get to deliver them where they need to be without having to worry about their movement, right? 2d6 move, but a 3d6 charge. You don't even have to, like, deploy them inside a unit of whatevers. Like, you can just have them on the table if you're playing Kragnos, right? They always have strike first. They deal so much damage. Right? Because if they're reinforced, there's 10 of them. So there's 10 of them. You're rolling 30 dice with all-out attack, 3s to hit, 3s to wound, 2 rend, and then D3 damage, and they have strike first. Like, these things are scary. 2 reinforced units of Fanatics with Kragnos is a scary list. It's like, hey, guess what? I'm going to throw, let's say, a reinforced unit of Herd at you turn 1 with Kragnos, and then whatever happens after that, my Fanatics are going to be moving up into position to do 3d6 charges at you to strike first. Like, it's terrifying. They're real weak against shooting and magic, but... Oh, another thing too, Scragrot's Fangs of Dabadbood spell is a very, very good spell. It's the best shooting we have in this book. Very, very good. And the Loon Shrine. The Loon Shrine is very strong. Being able to bring things out of the Loon Shrine for 1 command point is good. So you can definitely do a playstyle like that. Like, I have a list with Kragnos where... Here, I'll show you. I might as well show you. I have a list with Kragnos that I'm interested in playing. And essentially what the list is... so here it is right here. Let me make it a little bit bigger maybe so you can see it. Oops. Let's just go like this. pull this up. Okay, so it's Kragnos, right? With 6 Rock Guts that are going to be bodyguarded, most likely, just to make him unkillable. -1 attacks. He has a 5-up ward, right? Like, you're not going to kill my Kragnos. My Kragnos is going to kill you. Then I have Scragrot for some casting, right? Fangs of the Bad Moon with a reinforced unit of Bounders in there. And then a Squig boss with 2 reinforced units of Squig Herd. So it's like, I'm going to take Kragnos and I'm just going to throw buffed up Squig Herds at you. And then as you kill them, they're going to deal damage to you. And I'm just going to bring them out of the Loon Shrine and do it all over again. Interesting. Instead of Rock Guts or Bounders, right, you could also just do Fanatics, right? You could just throw tons of Fanatics at your opponent as well. Very good, very interesting, very strong. So a word on Trog. So Trog I consider to be an 8-tier unit. But I do not consider him to be an S-tier unit. My big problem with Trog is that he is inconsistent. And consistency for me matters a lot. As we were talking before about Trog's ley lines and the probability of getting the one that you want. Remember, it's less than 50-50 to get the one that you want. But besides that, you know, his Crushing Grip is good. Everything is fine. But he only throws 6 dice. He only throws 6 dice. So... do you want to spend all out attack for 6 dice? Like, maybe, right? Maybe. But if you just look at the profile, it's like with Mighty Antlers, if 2 dice on a 4-up, well, only one's getting through. And then it has to survive the wound roll and the save roll. So it's like the probability that you hit anything with Mighty Antlers is pretty low, right? Without doing the math, I'd say it's less than 1 in 4 that you actually get a Mighty Antler attack through. And then with the Iron Shell Club, it's a little bit better, right? 4 attacks, 3s to hit, 2s to wound, 2 rend. But I've seen Trog whiff. And it's not that unlikely that he just doesn't really deal very much damage at all. So it's like, you know, you're going to play games where... you're going to play a lot of games where you don't get the lead lines that you need. And where he doesn't do the damage that he needs to do. And then you're paying all of these points for... you know, but he's still good. Like, I don't play him in my lists, but he's still good. But I wouldn't consider him a key unit in the army, is essentially what I'm trying to say. Deployment, let's have a look. So here, oops, I have Tabletop Simulator, of course. And this is like this is my standard Gloomspite Gitz list right now. If I was going to bring a list to someone who'd never seen Gitz before, this is what I would bring. We have a Dankhold Trog boss. The general is Scragrot, the Loon King, but we have a Dankhold Trog boss, probably with the Git Shield. And then we have 2 reinforced units of Rock Guts and a Dankhold. Then we have, in another drop, we have the Loon boss on Cave Squig. This is just a unit of Hoppers. These would be Bounders if I had more points, but instead I have a unit of Gobblepaloozas. So we're going to have 3 casts in this list. Nope, 4 casts, because I think, never mind about Git Shield, I think this is... I think what I do is I take the Clammy Cowl, the -1 to hit, and Loon Touched on this boss, right? And then Scragrot, of course, with a reinforced unit of Bounders. So 2 Cavalry, Casters, Anvils, right? Like, this is a very sort of standard kind of army, I feel. Just kind of all around, right? Nothing super fancy. Nothing super specialized. So the first drop is going to be... so here we're playing on... ooh, this is a big... what map is this? Scorched Earth. Okay, we're really just kind of interested in the deployment zone. So on a map like this, I'm going to take 1 unit of Rock Guts and stick them somewhere over here. You know, my Rock Guts generally take the center, right? So let's say that I wanted to move them up here in the middle, and we're going to put a Trog boss. Trog boss is probably going to go over here. Remember that the Trog boss with Shepherd of Destruction has a 12-inch aura. So we want to try to get both units of Rock Guts within that 12-inch aura. I'm just going to make sure that's actually true. Dankhold, Trog boss. Shepherd of Destruction. On a 3-up for the rest of the turn, add one of the attack character melee weapons by friendly Trog Guts used while the wholly within the unit's combat range. So they has to be within 3 of the Trog boss. So you're going to want to try to get him into a position that's up here, and then where you have your Rock Guts kind of positioned around him so they can all gain advantage of that buff. And then we have a Dankhold. So my Dankhold is really like a sniper. He's really looking to like move around and wade and smash into my enemy's foot heroes. So we're going to stick him here, and maybe we'll be able to whip him through these terrain. But this is going to be my first drop. I want to try to deny as much information to my opponent as possible. And obviously my Rock Guts are going to be going in the center of the map. Up next, my next drop is probably going to be my my Bounder Boss. We're going to try to take the flanks, so I'm going to stick my Bounder Boss over here. And the unit of hoppers are going to go on the opposite side, right? We're going to try to take the flanks and take their land. So we're going to set up for that. Probably just go here, because I only need to be 6 inches out. So these guys should easily be able to score that. And then Gobblepalooza. Gobblepalooza is, like I said, going to want to try to get up into the fight. So Gobblepalooza is just going to hang out kind of in the middle here and follow in these rock cuts, casting manifestations and doing things as we go. Up next, we have the Bounders. The Bounders are going to take this side where the Bounder Boss is. Same thing, we're going to try to take the flanks. I should have probably positioned them a little bit further out from the middle, so I'll do that. And then Scragrot the Loon King, of course, is in the back. And then, of course, I forgot all about this. So before I do any of this, I have to place the Loon Shrine. So the Loon Shrine, I'm really enjoying putting the... So the Loon Shrine, it can go anywhere inside of friendly territory. The Loon Shrine can go, like, right up here onto this line. So I think, actually, this is probably where I would stick this Loon Shrine this game. And then all of my other units are going to move up. And then I'm going to have this 12 inches that's going to be all through the center. So all of my units, as they move up the board... Right, they're all going to be in a nice position where the Loon Shrine is going to be giving them their +1 to save. And if my opponent wants to fight it and jump on it early, okay. You're probably not going to be able to kill it in 1 turn. And then I'm going to come and bash you. Don't forget, too, that when you bring things out of the Loon Shrine, they have to be wholly within 12. And more than 3 from enemies. So it means that if I die, if I have rockets that die, they can come back in positions like this as long as they're 3 away from enemy units. Right, so like placing an aggressive Loon Shrine, I think, is the way you want to do it now. And normally oriented this way, like you want it to face north-south, not east-west, right? Because you're going to want to move past it. So put it in an aggressive position, I'm telling you, it's pretty good, right? And then we're going to have, like I said, these guys are going to move up the flank to try to score tactics, right? They're going to take the flanks, and it's quite predictable, right? Very good, very strong, very much a wah. Cool. So hit me up in the comments below. What here did I get wrong? In my Iron Jaws video, I got something super wrong. I had to make a correction video. So tell me what it is that I got wrong. What do you disagree with me with? Come in the Discord, have a conversation. I'm always down to, if you hit me up, if you ping me, I will reply every single time. Patrons, you guys always win every argument. So don't worry about it. Like, subscribe. Wah.